I thought about putting my portable apps directory in Dropbox and then just having portable apps everywhere.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
That seemed stupid, but also really smart. It seemed like smooth brain smart.
Exactly. It seems like the kind of thing that should be smart, but is in fact dumb because they didn't do it right.
Yeah, like I'm sure that if I do that, some stuff's not going to work right.
Yes, I can 100%. I would stake money upon it.
And it will be unpredictable, and it'll be something that probably like one other lunatic has also experienced, and everybody else will be like, man, I've never seen a bug like that before. Can you submit logs?
And it'll be something that you can't be sure but suspect that is because of Dropbox.
Well, yeah, and it's like when you have a problem and you report the problem, you'll have to lead that conversation, every one of those conversations with, I'm doing something kind of stupid, but
that's when you get a bunch of people running interference by just saying, why are you doing that? We're not going to address your problem. We're just going to question why the hell are you doing that?
Your choices have led you unworthy for support. I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah, yes. Although, frankly, why the hell are you doing that is where I live in computing for the most part. So
you do.
I like to push things to the limit. Let's say
past the point of no return.
Yeah. Did you see? Well, you probably didn't see. You don't have AM5. Noctua announced an offset bracket for AM5 for their tower coolers at Computex.
Oh, that's nice.
I think conceptually it's interesting because do you know what the package looks like on the new Ryzens?
Yeah, I was there when you put it in your computer.
No, the package underneath the heat spreader. I mean, like the layout of the dies. It's the die. There's an IO die.
It's asymmetrical, right?
Yeah. So yes, the IO die and the two CCDs sit like down at the bottom of the package rather than right in the middle. Ooh. So this is an offset bracket to move the cooler down right over that hotspot where the dies are.
Oh, so the sweet spot of the pipes, pipes are directly over the. Wow, that's interesting.
Yes, and I bring this up because I got an immediate "Why are you doing that?" on the Discord when I said, "Yeah, I'm going to get one of those," because even Noctua's testing said it's 1 to 3 degrees Celsius reduction in temperatures.
That's not worth taking your computer apart.
But it's only $5.
It's not worth you're gonna have to redo the goo.
Oh, no, that's no.
Oh no, because you have the graphite pad.
I used the graphite pad, and everybody was like, "Sure, but how often do you actually take your cooler off to not want to redo paste all the time?" And here we are, less than 2 months later, with me taking my cooler off.
Can I point out that isn't the graphite pad like 1 to 3 degrees Celsius less efficient than not using the graphite pad and using something good instead?
Depends on who you ask.
Okay. Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
I'm Brad.
Hi, Brad. How you doing?
Hello. I'm doing well. I'm not wearing a gigantic $3,500 slab of aluminum and glass on my face. So
wow, spoilers, man.
I'm probably going to put it in the episode description.
Yeah, look. It should be the name of the episode. Is Norm is here to talk about the Apple Vision Pro.
Yes, Vision Pro. I don't know about that name. I'm not sure. It doesn't sound like an Apple name to me.
Well, it has Pro and it has a word and it has Apple, but they don't go together in the right order or something. Anyway, our longtime friend, my former colleague at multiple sites and multiple print magazines, all the way back to the Maximum PC and PC Gamer days, Norman Chan, currently of Tested.com and the Tested YouTube channel, is here today to talk to us about his experiences going to the Apple mothership and sitting in the Steve Jobs Theater and watching a video like we all did at home, but he was in the Steve Jobs Theater, and then going into a special little room and getting to put on and use the brand newly announced, not available until next year, Apple Vision Pro. Welcome to the show, Norm. Okay, holy cow. After 13 years of doing Tested, there's no video on the podcast, Norm, so your finger guns don't count.
Oh my God. Wow.
Norman Chan, you were invited as a Tested employee, as a Tested representative to cover an Apple event with behind the scenes hardware access, the whole deal. 13 long years. The dream has finally come true.
I feel like there's some context here that I might be missing.
You could say that all 13 years was built up to yesterday.
Like Norm and I used to joke when we were sitting in the cafe. So, okay, for people who don't know, right, we talked about this in the intro, I'm sure, but Norm and Brad and I worked together in a small shop in Sausalito, California, and there was this diner down the street that we would go to and drink coffee and eat fried eggs and hash browns and talk about content. And we used to joke, because I always sent an email asking for access to Apple events, knowing that they were going to say no, that at no point would they ever allow us in to get actual hands-on access to stuff when they would
not go that far down the bottom of the barrel. Right. And it was a deep barrel.
Yeah, there were way more apples in the barrel above us when they finally got to us.
Yes.
Yeah. So congratulations, Norm.
Thank you.
You have access now. But yeah, how was it? What was it? What is they announced the AR glasses that are not called
Apple
AR
Vision
glasses.
Pro.
Yeah.
AVP. I let's not call it AVP.
No, please don't.
I heard myself doing it internally multiple times today after seeing someone, Ben from Road to VR, call it AVP on Twitter. And then I started saying AVP, and I know it's gonna catch at some point, but for today, for this grace period of less than 24 hours after the first day of WWDC, let's keep it Apple Vision Pro.
I like Av Pro.
I mean, this is a whoever wins we lose situation, though, right?
It is. You're right. Then yes, great tagline. Yes, absolutely. And game or movie.
Yeah.
Right. Ooh, what's the reference? Do you want before we dive into the hardware, how much time do you want to fill? You want to talk about the whole experience of getting the invite and going to the mothership?
So yeah, I feel okay. It's early hardware. We can do the high points, right? It's going to be starting at $3,500, which is a real interesting, like that starting at is carrying a lot of weight there. Cause I assume that it's going to be like you can get the 128 gig one for $3,500. And then for another $200, you get 512 gigs or some nonsense.
I don't believe it's going to be capacity. It's going to be prescription lenses and
and the band and
stuff
like if you want the Hermes leather double,
I don't know if they'll do that.
Band.
They're not positioning. It's not premium. It's not high end in that sense.
Okay.
I'm sure it'll be a status symbol. But I believe it's going to be probably all the fit accessories to make it wear best and most usable.
So, okay, $3,500 shipping next year, pre-orders start next year, shipping sometime next year, presumably.
They didn't even say shipping next year. I mean, I think they would say available early next year, which is what they said when they announced the Apple Watch, and that ended up shipping in April.
Well, and they also used similar language when they pre-announced the iPhone. Because, they wanted to kind of prime the pump before, and they announced it way before. It wasn't when they announced the first iPhone. It wasn't like, hey, you can buy this on Friday. It's going to be available later this year.
Yeah. Yeah. How much do your listeners want to get in terms of the context of the buildup, the anticipation, what the rumors were, what the other companies were doing in this space leading up to before yesterday?
I feel like
the world before and the world after.
I feel like we're pretty well informed about what Facebook was up to. I kind of don't care about rumors. I'm like, this is something we've talked about that's been kind of percolating for 5 years ish now. Like,
yeah. I mean, I think as soon as VR hit that first hockey stick like growth curve before the well was poisoned. I think it did in terms of investment, right? Ever. I don't think adoption, but certainly investment. There was a lot of hype around it.
Capability.
And Apple started working on something, as they do, like the rumored TV stuff, the rumored car stuff. And so, the word was they wanted to get something right. And this was presumably an announcement that they had pushed back a couple years. But at this point, what's the state of the market, right? You have Quest 2 already, a couple years old, Quest 3 coming out this year, Quest Pro dipping into more of a productivity space and making pass-through AR more acceptable. You have the optical pass-through headsets really failing to launch, both in HoloLens and Magic Leap, even though you have 2 generations of both those headsets. I think Apple probably looked at development they were doing internally, looked at the market, and even though they don't like jumping in first, they really want to set the tone. And we'll talk about tone and all the language they use when they announce this. But I'm sure they didn't want the well to be poisoned too much with metaverse talk, and to really put their foot in the ground with essentially a developer kit.
Yeah, it's interesting because like this whole thing, watched it a couple of times now, and then watched what people who you Norm did a great video over on the Tested YouTube channel that we'll link in the show notes that kind of walks through his demo experience and what they showed, what he saw. But it's an inside out video pass through AR headset that does slam tracking. It has a bunch of cameras for hand tracking. It has a bunch of stuff for eye tracking inside, which is kind of new in this. I mean, the Quest Pro does that, I guess, but that's the newer end of the technology. It can do foveated rendering, presumably.
Does, yep.
And I think the big thing is they're putting essentially an iPad on your face. Like it's an M2 processor, so iPad processor, very capable. Same thing that's in the MacBook in MacBook Airs and the small MacBooks and presumably the new desktop one too. And then they also have a special chip that does presumably handles the video pass through processing so that it's very low latency and all of that stuff. And like they kind of. Like the interesting thing to me isn't even all the technology stuff, because sure, Apple's going to do good hardware, but that they're positioning it as, hey, this is a thing that you can do your 2D stuff in that also does a little bit of VR stuff is a real choice. And I kind of don't like, I get it. I think
it speaks to two things.
Okay.
Right? It speaks to one, they definitely don't want to be this to be positioned as a VR device, even though it fundamentally is a virtual reality device.
Yeah.
Like if you look at the fundamental technology, it is a virtual reality headset with pass-through video. They don't even use, aside from Tim Cook saying he believes augmented reality is one of the futures of technology, they never in their press release use the words augmented reality. It's a spatial reality device. So they want to kind of redefine the technology on their own terms, which is a very Apple thing to do. No mention of metaverse, no mention, and which is a strength of Meta, Facebook, connectivity, networking.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to that, right? So that's one reason. And the other reason is as they're putting a bunch of use cases out and that they've developed and that they're working with developers to develop, I'd like to watch. They're really trying to throw things at the wall and see what's going to stick. And one of the things they're throwing out to get people interested is the large library of iPad and iOS applications, which by that token means they're really leveraging 2D interactions in a 3D space as a primary first use case.
Well, I mean, that's the thing that they have that nobody else in this space has, right? Even Google has a mobile app ecosystem and people in that space, but Facebook has nobody's using Facebook. Nobody wants to use Facebook OS to do their work stuff or their home computing stuff, right? Even Microsoft struggled with this with the HoloLens stuff, because basically the HoloLens is a device that your corporation buys and builds custom apps for if you have workers that need AR access to information. Hey, here's something you could buy for $3,500 that makes your Mac screen real big or lets you have a wall of Mac screens in front of you is kind of an interesting positioning for what's essentially a VR headset.
And they don't just have that, they led with that. Like that was the beginning of the presentation, and also like 80% of it is like literally.
And I'm not sure how much of that is market research driven or internal testing driven. Like did they survey users, or based on their testing, that's what they feel is the strongest part of this, or if that's where they feel like they're going to get most of the early customer adoption, where it's going to be like designers who have $3,500 businesses with early seed money who are making millions and tens of millions on selling CAD parts and designing, complex machinery, who need this, where it's proven that those companies are already spending money on HoloLens and already spending money on the Vario headsets.
I mean, they had gotten through both Microsoft Office and I think that virtual production line, right? Like, hey, you can see a 3D representation of the new production line you're about to tool up before they ever got to, by the way, here's like this Constellation app somebody made for it. Here's some new stuff. Also, let's pay lip service to Unity and video games for 3 minutes.
Or the human interaction, like the connectivity stuff, the FaceTime, right?
Yes.
You would think that one of the strengths of Apple is the strong emotional connection that people have and that devices allow people to have together, right? Like Apple is all about the feeling you have when you use these devices and how they connect you with people. And it was there. the FaceTime stuff was there, but and the capturing memories was there, but I don't think it was as pronounced as some of the other applications, which I think that speaks to them still figuring this out. From the hardware perspective, what the competitive advantage, like price notwithstanding, right? Well, what makes this headset different is, one, Apple has access to the suppliers that many, even the biggest companies, may not have access to, and including their own hardware. So, yes, the Apple Silicon, which is going to be the most efficient, right? And maybe the display suppliers that I'm sure other companies like Facebook or Meta have investigated, but Apple can buy them at quantity or can claim rights on those. The tight integration with their entire ecosystem. So, Will, like you said, no one wants to use. There is no equivalent of Mac OS on any other platform. Everyone is just grafted on Android. So the perfect example of that is their demo of using a virtual desktop, where for them, you hover the headset, look over the MacBook, and you're going to automatically sync up and have the virtual desktop pop up. For Meta, the Meta Quest Pro has a version of that. If you just look at checkboxes, they have a virtual desktop feature that requires, and it works with MacBooks, and that requires installing a client, typing in authorization codes, manually syncing, having a kind of bit rate dependent, internet quality, local Wi-Fi dependent connection and it's clunky compared to what they can do.
And like, this is the place that Apple excels with. Like, it's one of those things that I didn't really appreciate until I had a watch, a phone, and AirPods, right? How seamlessly the whole thing works together. Apple has been quietly putting these UWP radios in their devices for the last few years. So all of your Apple stuff has a thing in it that's going to let this know when you look at it what it is, and know that it's yours, and that you can just connect to it, and all of a sudden your iPad shows up in the headset. I mean, it's convenient that it means that you end up buying a bunch of different Apple things that all work together really nicely.
And that's not easy, right? It's not just like, you can say, oh, it makes sense because, you buy a family of devices and they should work together. That should working together, and it does working together in a seamless way, is a complicated thing that they've built in and worked on over time, which you can't, Meta can't just buy a laptop company or buy a watch company and make these things work. It's very tight because it's at these fundamentals.
Yeah, they'd have to buy Microsoft.
Yeah.
So, okay. On the hardware itself, there's a couple other things that are weird and interesting about this. The outward facing screen, the eye tracking sounds great. The magnet-on lenses inside I'm as somebody who wears glasses and needs them to see, I'm very excited about that, because the clip-in ones are fine, but this sounds better.
Sorry, let me jump in. Is that included? Is that for prescription lenses?
So I think this is where you're starting at 3,500. So what they said is, the way they designed it, and we'll talk about, as I describe this, a lot of it will be in reference to the Quest Pro. One of the things I like about the Quest Pro is the way you put it on, the glasses fit like underneath the lenses. There's no pressure point to where it's because it's a halo style head strap. So the pressure point's on your forehead, not on your brow or your cheeks. Here they want the lenses as close to your eyes as possible. So you're not going to be able to wear glasses underneath this. And so anyone who does need a prescription, either you're going to need contacts or you're going to give them your prescription, and then Zeiss, as their manufacturing partner, will make the lenses that automatically magnetically attach. And, VR headsets have lenses that you can clip on, but those are aftermarket accessories, and some of them are magnetically attached, but you do, for the most part, need to have to install a frame that then the magnet lens grips onto. And that's a lot of bulk. Did
they talk about, it also keeps your eyes further from the lenses, which means it reduces your FOV. Did they talk about people with complicated prescriptions are going to be able to do astigmatisms and stuff like that, and it didn't get, of course, waved ahead.
There's so many fringe cases. This is I think VR fundamentally is going to be a device that excludes a lot of people, right? Our friend Dan Amarick, people who don't have stereo vision, that they're not going to be able to maximize this. There's going to be a certain amount of population for the fit. It's not going to be great. However much they can customize the facial interface to your face. The IPDs of people are so wide ranging, and this is a motorized automatic adjustment IPD, but they didn't share that range either. But it's a choice for every manufacturer that makes a headset. There's unless even if you're a big screen, making that big screen beyond, they do a actual customized fabricated interface that is milled and conforms perfectly to your face. But even then, their IPD is a limited range because of the manufacturing limitations.
So, like, how did it feel?
Like physically feel?
Yeah. Did it feel heavy? It did feel heavy. It's glass on the front. It's aluminum. It looks heavy.
Yeah. And I think I said this in my video, but I'm coming this maybe a little biased because with the Quest Pro, I'm used to the weight distribution being counterbalanced with the battery in the back.
Yeah.
I'm used to the pressure being on my forehead. So on the Quest Pro, no pressure on my cheeks and my forehead at all. On the Big Screen Beyond, which is my daily driver now, our early DVT unit for PCVR, that one has that gasket that's perfectly contoured, made shape for my face.
They literally scan your face and then print
they literally
one that's
scan
custom.
Your face and they make this like squishy silicone like thing, and so that's so comfortable and super lightweight. But that one also isn't a AR system, no cameras. It uses Steam tracking. Yeah. That's super lightweight. So, putting this on, maybe the expectations were off just because of what I'm used to. But I don't think I was prepared for that glass to just weigh a little bit heavier than I expected. And the fit wasn't perfect for me. So it touched more my brow than my cheeks, and that space between the gasket and my cheeks just meant that the headset drooped a little bit over time in that 30-minute demo.
So when you got to the place where you're putting on the headset, they checked your glasses, they scanned your face with an iPhone, they scanned your ears to see what the spatial audio would work, and then they gave you a face gasket or face interface based on the face scan.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't make a new one. They just pulled their drawer open, and by the time I got to the room, they had put the right one on the headset. But then even then it wasn't perfect. They tried a different one, and the one they ended up with was okay. But like I said, it wasn't a perfect fit.
So this whole process tells me that they expect this to be a singular device that you use for one person and isn't like a shared family device.
I'm sure you can scan people, right? If they, obviously they want everyone to have one in their home eventually.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a practical thing, and people are going to want to share. So I could imagine them having a new part of the App Store app on your iPhone where you can scan your own face and say, if your family member, if your partner wants to use this, they can scan their face and we'll give you a recommendation. Buy this gasket, and they'll sell you the gasket as an accessory.
Yeah.
And then you can, swap between users. They didn't say anything about OS though, whether you'll have multi-users, log out, log back in. It took a while for them to do that, even for iOS devices. It took a while for Meta to do that for Quest devices, because I don't think that's a priority for people who sell devices. They want each person to have their own. But multi-users, of course, what makes the best for consumer.
And on the demo units, they had the top strap that seems like an option that can snap on as well, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
So then the reason the front is glass is because they have a screen on the front that is, I think, the thing that people are kind of latching onto the most, where if you're watching something describe the two modes. They have two modes that they use to describe this. They have the ambient and the immersive mode, right?
Yes. Well, the default mode is just pass through, right? It's just spatial reality mode.
Okay.
Where when you wear the headset, you get a UI that's your home screen in front of you, but by default, you will see the world around you, and the world is automatically mapped. So all the SLAM stuff is done in the background. You're never drawing borders, drawing guardians. By the same token, they're not surfacing borders or guardians. So when I got close to a wall, it didn't have that holodeck wall appear and say, you're getting too close. The demo person had to hold me back and say, whoa, you're getting too close to the wall here.
Oh, so they weren't showing any kind of chaperone type system at all.
No,
presumably that'll be there. Yeah.
You would hope so. Or, maybe they feel confident enough of their pass-through imagery, like the video, that they would assume that you would see the thing that you would bump into. But you're right. You got to have the pass-through if you're going to turn the wall into a virtual space. Yeah. If you're going to look into the infinite environment, you got to have something like that.
I guess we'll get into screen quality in general as we get through this.
Yeah,
but how did the feed of the room around you look? I mean, they've talked about the pixel density on this thing. Was it lifelike or?
Those are two different things we're talking about. I think some of the people have conflated those. The screen quality is extremely high resolution. I would say it's more than double what you'd find in the Quest Pro, and almost like 30 to 40% more than even what's in the big screen beyond, which is already on the high end, right? That's a 2560 by 2560 per eye display. They didn't talk about resolution here, but I think Palmer Luckey tweeted out that based on his information that they're using what the big screen beyond folks have, but the next generation of that, which speaks to Apple's access to the manufacturing pipelines. The pass-through image quality, though, there is not pixel to pixel accurate, right? So they're not filling all 23 million pixels with it. They don't have that high resolution camera or the optics for that for the pass-through camera.
Oh, so they're taking lower resolution video that's probably skewed because it's got weird lenses on it, and then perspective correcting that so you see something that lines up 1-to-1 with what you would if you were looking with your eyes.
Yeah, but it's not distorted, so there's no like warbling or distorting, but it is lower resolution than the rendered imagery that you'd see. So that it's perspective correct, right? Yeah. It's stereo. You get depth. Left and right eye look different. It's clear enough that you can read what's on your phone. It does enough exposure compensation so phones aren't blown out. But I think I describe it as like lower end of HD. Like it's not like when I say like 720, it's not 720 as if like the camera's a 720p, but it's like the clarity of looking at a 720p image.
So did you try to pick something up that you couldn't use proprietary? Like if you're trying to grab your phone from your pocket, that's using proprioception because you know where your pocket is, you know where the phone is. You don't have to use your eyes. If you had your phone on the table in front of you, would you be able to grab it without like feeling around, or would you have missed?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah. No, the representation, the physical representation, location of everything is 1-to-1. It's perfect.
It's interesting because to contrast this with like Magic Leap and HoloLens, which basically are projecting holograms, holographic images, stereoscopic images on the world around you in a relatively limited FOV. This, you're getting a wider FOV, it seems like, but a lower resolution of the world.
There's more field of vision to place the projected objects, the holograms, for sure, right? Because the HoloLens, but the trade-offs between optical pass-through and video pass-through is optical pass-through. Well, the world is free.
Yeah,
you just get the world. You get all the peripheral information in the world, which is why I think like going back to the Quest Pro, that is video pass-through as well. But because the lens I don't use it with the full light blockers. I like seeing the extra periphery of the light around the world because I think that actually helps my immersion, helps the believability of the pass-through more because it is perfectly aligned. I don't want to feel that. I don't want to get that tunnel vision.
It also probably helps your motion sickness too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel less. Yeah. Because there's zero latency with photons in the world.
Yeah. And so, okay. So you control the amount of world you see by twisting the watch knob basically.
Yes. Yeah. So the crown dial, digital crown on the top right is the home button. And you tap that anytime the home menu pops up, you can hold it down, which recenters. I think too many people were focusing on what happens when you turn the dial, because that makes a lot more sense if like VR was the primary use case. If I'm mostly immersed in digital environments and I wanted to see the pass through, right? Because here the default use case is pass through by design.
Yeah.
Like I'm not turning that dial all the time to then be enveloped in VR. Like it's like I want to put the blinders on a regular basis. But it is a thing when you load up environments for the cinema mode, when you load up environments for like these are kind of like Apple watch face environments where like they are going to curate, they're going to provide the volumetric environments.
So like for assumption. The movie mode, they showed foundation cinemas, or something, and you're like in a foundation-y kind of world sitting on a planet with the space
Disney
around
Plus,
you.
Like they'll work with partners to create the certified volumetric environments. This is where, if you want to be immersed, you can pull the curtains around, or you can retract the curtains and maybe have like a half immersion, and they'll vignette it and have that comfort of the pass-through. They're really cognizant, I think, of not isolating people when they're wearing a headset, because over the years, as you and I have known, Will, like it's a solitary experience.
Yeah.
It's a vulnerable experience when you're in a headset. And so they want to do everything to make people who are maybe many of them first time AR, VR users, to have the comfort of pass-through being the default. And by the same token, which is why they have that display in the front as well.
It's interesting that they position this as, hey, this is a thing you can spend 10 hours a day in doing your work and then also relaxing. And at the same time, literally every VR developer I know, both current and past, is like, yeah, eventually I just didn't ever want to wear a headset again. Right.
Well, I think they look at the pain points. Is the pain point like, is it nausea? Is it discomfort because of resolution and latency?
It's the thing writing on your face for me, right?
They can't get around that. Yeah. I don't think anyone's going to be getting around that, right? Yeah. But they're hoping that, the screen quality is good enough, comfortable enough, and the latency is low enough at 12 milliseconds, which is like a third or a fourth of what the other headsets go for. That it will just feel natural, and you can spend longer times in it, battery aside.
They didn't put the 12 millisecond number wasn't in the video. I assume they told you that in the private talk, or did I just miss it?
They confirmed in the private talk, but I think it was in their press release, or it was in one of the releases that went out. And it's motions to photons, and this is what when they were touting the R1 chip that does all the image processing and the gesture tracking, like that. That is what allows for that ultra low latency. It's
interesting that they gave a number, because like they didn't give resolution numbers. They didn't give they didn't give very many numbers at all. And that one is such an important one that I think that I assume that there had to be some sort of internal fight that was like, we have to give this number because it's important. And we spent a lot of time like making that number low, which is important to the whole thing working.
I think you're right. And it's also a number they know no one can match.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or even get close to.
Okay. Yeah. So the front glass, they show eyes if you can see the world around you, and then they show some like blurry nonsense if you can't.
So it's an OLED panel, and I think there's a lot of confusion about what it's actually showing. I think it probably adds to the weight a little bit, right? It's another thing that they have the power. It has to, right? And I don't think it's the reason they have glass. I think the glass is another one of those like, because we can, Apple, that we want to make this like a beautiful piece of glass in the front and protect our lenses and whatever. But the OLED panel, I think the smart thing they did here, which is a very Apple thing, because Meta's tried this. Like when I went last year to Meta Reality Labs up in Seattle area, they showed me some of the prototypes they had experimented with. One of which was reverse pass-through. They had, in this prototype, which appears in the video I did last year, there were two displays, one for each eye in front, kind of like putting your googly eyes, that people have done on their VR glasses. But here there were two like small rectangular panels. And in the test they've shown, you can actually find video of this online. You have like these blinking eyeballs, right? And basically be like a video recording of blinking eyeballs that they would then correspond with the eye tracking that they would have in the headset, just to have some type of human communication connection. It feels like they've abandoned that path because it was so like uncanny valley.
Well, it adds a ton of overhead to the headset too. Like,
sure, yeah. But it just it didn't. Probably the weirdness of it worked against the thing that was supposed to be its benefit, the connection element, right? So, but I think the smart thing that Apple's doing here is one, they're making it a lenticular screen, or they put a lenticular filter in front of it, which means it's effectively is a light field like multi-view display.
Well, it can give the illusion of depth for the people looking at it, depending on the angle you're looking at, right?
They do two things. One, it's receded behind the glass the way it's presented, so it looks closerly aligned to where your face would be, where your actual face and eyes would be. So it's not like right on the surface of the glass. So that's a benefit, right? Two, because of the way they're using that lenticular screen, my understanding of it is that means if someone's coming at you from the right side and someone's coming at you from the left side, they see different parts of your face.
They see projections that are different, that look appropriate for the angles they're at.
So the way a multi-view display works, companies like Leia and the Red phone did this. Looking Glass does this. Is that they're, as opposed to rendering a single image, they are processing a 3D model and slicing that 3D model into, like however many views that you want to make that lenticular. The more views, the lower resolution per slice. Right. So at the most basic level, 2 slices means you get a stereo image, and you can see 3D. It's a stereo image, but you only can see it from one point of view. That's 3D TV.
Yeah.
If you slice it into 4, then you can get 2 3D views, maybe one from the left side and one from the right side, maybe, angular, like 60 degrees apart or something. And then there's a nice limit. There's a sweet spot where you can have, and they never say, you don't know, but, maybe 64 different views or something, which means that from 64 individual different positions looking at the screen, you would see a different perspective, which then gives you the illusion of some 3-dimensional object there. So I think that's what they're doing, which then makes that representation of your eyes through the front of Apple Glass feel more like it's actually your face.
Did you see this working?
No, they never showed this working. It was only in video. I don't think it's ready yet.
And they said it is 3. So that was my question: are they using the eye tracking cameras to actually project?
No.
Okay.
They are using eye tracking cameras to then graph that motion data onto your avatar, your persona avatar.
Presumably is not created in the face scan and all that process.
Oh, actually, do we assume that the image people are seeing externally to the headset on the front screen is the same one that they're also going to present in FaceTime to people?
Yes, that is. I think it has to be that, because you can't do multi views. With one, you're not illuminating your eyes. There's no bright light. I mean, I guess
there's infrared light inside. Yeah,
there's infrared light, and I guess there's the light of the panel, right? But it's not like they're capturing 5 different views of your eyeballs and your face, and you're wearing a gasket. Like, it's tightly fit in. What they're showing isn't like you with like stretched eyes and a gasket. It's a render. They
just take the circle around your eyeball, and then they use the machine learning to extend it out like you do the Mona Lisa to find out what's on the rest of the Mona Lisa.
Why do that when you can just do the machine learning ahead of time to generate an avatar and have the avatar? And that's why the lenticular works to its advantage, because then the lenticular aspect lowers the resolution, right? Adds like a little bit of fuzziness to the clarity, which means that you don't approach the uncanny valley as much.
Yeah, I'm really disappointed that they didn't show this to people in person, because like of the things, like it is a classic. This is not going to look right on video at all kind of idea, and they must think it's going to be good, or else they wouldn't devote this much like space and cost to it. Although in a world where there's a Vision non-pro, like that's
I mean,
the first thing that
I think it's a fundamental part. I think theoretically, yes. I think you're right. They must think it's good. 2, they must think it's important and essential. And 3, they must have confidence they can get it right eventually. All things that you like, Siri, perfect example, right? Like, they must have thought it was good, essential, and important, and they got like one of those things right. It's at launch.
It's the thing I kept thinking as I was watching this is Apple doesn't do things on whims, right? These are all like, this is a very carefully calculated, really intentionally constructed presentation of all the way down to showing the dad shooting the video of his kid's birthday with the glasses on, and being the least present possible version of present that you could be. Like, all of that is intentional.
There were several Black Mirror moments in this thing, but that one was absolutely the standout.
This is the one yes that made through 100 no's. And even at that point, Apple is famous for killing things if the optics could be bad on it. And this made it through. So I think they have confidence in it. But so I agree that I'm surprised they didn't show it.
I think the takeaway has to be the 3D nature of we'll talk about that stuff in a minute when we get to demos. But okay, so they showed a bunch of different modes of people using this thing. They showed gestures alone, which I want to spend some time talking about because it sounded pretty cool from what you said and what everyone else got into too. They showed somebody using a MacBook interfacing with like the remote desktop on the MacBook using a Bluetooth keyboard and Magic Trackpad. And then they showed a gamepad, I think, at some point. And then that was it. There's no hand controllers for this. The controllers are your hands.
The controllers are your hands, eyes, and voice. They explicitly are designing and Bluetooth accessories. They'll be made for Vision OS, I'm sure, right? And I don't know if motion controllers are going to cross that bar, because it feels like this is a very anti-motion controller. They are very confident in the power and I don't think it's a cost cutting measure, because I think it's an expensive thing for them to R&D, but that I think they really have a fundamental belief that not holding controller is the only way this is going to be like usable everywhere.
Same philosophy as like multi-touch, right? It's like, hey, we think this is the way that people are most naturally going to relate to this thing.
Yeah. I mean,
exactly.
It literally seems like Steve Jobs saying multi-touch is better than a hardware keyboard.
Well, and you know what? Multi-touch ended up working great, but because they issued physical gamepads, like games on iPad still suck.
Yeah.
I mean, the traditional 2-stick model still doesn't work, right? No one has solved that yet. And it could be the case that no one will be able to ever solve, like, how do you hold a virtual blaster or a pistol without a physical motion controller?
Like
we don't know.
I mean, obviously there's not going to be a Beat Saber for this, because Facebook's not going to make Beat Saber for an Apple device, but like, I don't know, what was your sense of latency and like fidelity and stuff? Could you have played Beat Saber just with your hands on this?
I think, yeah, easily.
Okay.
Yes. I think that if like Fruit Ninja with hands would have been no problem.
Okay.
A big question is like
pew, pew, pew.
Finger guns. I think finger guns, no problem. And maybe like, so this goes to gestures, right? This goes to why they so strongly invested and believe in gestures. And it's because the way they're implementing gestures with the additional context clue of eye tracking, I think the gaze tracking is their secret sauce here.
Yeah. So can we talk about that some? Because like your description, MKBHD and you, and I watched a bunch of videos this morning. I literally have not heard Jaded Tech Press talk so enthusiastically about pre-release Apple technology, as like everyone was really positive about this. And everybody also described it as magic, while saying, hey, it's not magic, but also this feels really good.
I don't think I use the word magical, but that is auto magical is explicitly the language that they would describe it, Apple.
Okay.
And I think that was probably relayed to everyone who got a briefing.
They seeded the words.
And so I'm sure the word that was a seeded word in the mind of, I mean, I love MKBHD's overview. I thought he did an amazing job with describing the experience and the hardware. But the way, so I'll give you a little bit of again, compare it to the alternative, right? Oculus Quest, Meta Quest Pro, they have hand tracking. It's a big deal, right? Hand tracking has worked really well. They've improved it over time. It aligns perfectly with their hands. And a lot of that interaction that they've designed with the hand tracking works for how they've implemented it, which is primarily taps for gestures, holding, so these analogs to clicking, right? So it knows the orientation of your hand. It knows whether you've pressed them together to tap. And then for highlighting and selecting items, there are actually two ways to do it now in the Meta whatever OS, their interface.
Zuck OS, I think is what they call it.
Yeah, it's there's ray casting. So you imagine a laser beam that's being transmitted from like your wrist. So you use from your elbow to your wrist, a line being projected out, and you're laser beaming, highlighting an icon, and then hitting a gesture and selecting it. Or there is actually, in the latest versions of the OS, you can actually have like the simulation of virtual tap surfaces. So you can bring a keyboard up to you, bring an interface up to you, and then put your finger through it, and then it would activate. You don't get real haptics that way, but your brain sometimes can feel like you're hitting it. Your brain gets confused enough. It's actually really cool. And those are effective to some extent, but I think Apple probably tried all that stuff, and they probably realize that type of using that gestures can be fatiguing. it's like no one wants to, the Minority Report using, air, moving your fingers and hands around. It's great for show, right? Doctor Strange hands. But like people are lazy motherfuckers. Like, locomotion. It's the same problem that, Valve had with room scale, right? It's so cool as a thing. The first time you walk around a physical space and are ducking under things. But you know what? These guys playing Rec Room or playing Onward or Pavlov, they're just laying down, sitting down most of the time and holding controllers and like just using thumbsticks to move around and then moving their head, right? Like there's some parts of locomotion and physical movement and motion control that's fun. And some part that when you're activating UI, you just want it to be like instantaneous and not fatiguing.
Yeah, well, and you want it to be without thought. You don't need this whole getting over this motion hump is the big challenge for VR, like for goggles in general. Cause like, it's why instead of playing Diablo 4 or Zelda on the Switch or Steam Deck or whatever, I sit and play a match 3 on my phone. It's because the phone's right there and it's like 2 taps away versus having to go get up and get the other thing and turn it on and wait for it to boot and fire up the thing. Like inertia is real and it makes a huge difference.
And I'll go one further with like the mouse, right? The mouse is effectively a motion controller, but the mouse takes advantage of the most like dexterous part of the human body, your fingers and your wrist, and graphs and basically translates a small amount of movement into a big amount of movement. And our bodies can do that. And it's not fatiguing, but still it can be fatiguing over time, right? But it's why we have small gestures with the mouse and not big gestures, one-to-one relationships between the cursor and the screen. So what Apple did is they have a multimodal approach. They're combining eye tracking, gaze tracking, and making that at launch, gaze tracking with gestures at the start. They work together fundamentally for interacting with the interface, and which is not something that anyone else has done. Which isn't to say that like Meta couldn't implement gaze tracking plus gestures in their UI. But at this point, they'd be doing a lot of catch up because it's not as simple as where your eyes are looking, highlight, and then tap. What Apple's doing behind the backgrounds and what some of the developers who maybe have left Apple Sense work on this have now since shared is that they're doing a lot of machine learning, constantly analyzing where your eyes are looking at and then doing prediction for intent for where you're looking at. So
it's like when the keyboard substitutes ducking for fucking for ducking every time I try to, like they're getting my intent exactly right.
If you're in the Photos app and you're looking at a certain photo, if you looked at a certain photo for amount of time, you can, maybe the system can apply. Maybe you're ready to scan to a different photo, or your next step most likely is going to be here, and prime the system for your eyes to, and maybe so it's again, I'm not sure this is the case, but maybe it's dynamically sized hitboxes based on where the prediction systems are, with the sole purpose of making it feel as fast and intuitive as possible.
So,
okay. And that's where the magic is. When they say magical, that's where I think it is happening, because it was so responsive. Like nowhere did I like have to like delay my intent between looking at, because your eyes move quickly. Your eyes are like think of that. Your eyes move so much faster than your wrist does in terms of moving a cursor. You're darting across your entire field of vision, milliseconds, sub-milliseconds, constantly.
Well, yeah, and you don't even realize it is the thing. They're constantly moving. The saccades. Two thoughts. One is this seems like a really nice technology for accessibility for people who have limited mobility. Is it because like I've used eye trackers, I've used I've tested out assistive eye trackers before. I have a Tobii eye tracker on my monitor right now, and there's a level of fiddliness with those that requires your head to be in a specific place, and like it doesn't handle saccades always very well. If you get to the edges of the display, the fidelity of it gets jankier. Did you notice any kind of that kind of stuff? How, like it wasn't jittery, it was filtering out the saccades, all that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no cursor. There's no floating, there's no floating indicator of what you're looking at.
Did it indicate focus? Like when you looked at a picture?
It does. It occasionally. Yep.
Makes it bigger or something?
Yeah. So icon, when you highlight over, a menu icon, yes, there will be a little animation, but there's no, even if you use, a mouse on an iPad, right? There's going to be a bubble that moves around. There's none of that virtual cursor. It's instantaneous. And I think that speaks to some of the trickery they're doing to, magnetically attach, to move your targets ahead of where you're looking or to lock them in. You can imagine them doing this on desktop OS, right? You can totally imagine if they had machine trained your mouse cursor so that as fast as you're moving, it would lock on to certain things in the UI based on where it would think you're moving. And obviously, I don't think that really would work because I think we want the mouse cursor to really be one-to-one. But because of the erraticness of your eye movement, I think they kind of have to do that. And I think it works to their advantage to making it feel like it's reading your mind.
How did you handle things like scrolling and gestures that require 2 axes of movement?
Pinch and drag. So pinch and drag. And so
but
the
little
benefit,
little movements or big movements?
Yeah, little movements.
You weren't waving your hand like Minority Report style. You're just sitting with your hand in your lap.
I think you could. And I think, again, this is ties to where Apple excels in the smoothness of their interface. Like in the iPad, you could do big scrolls or small scrolls, but it's kind of like, it's like pulling a string, right? Like they have the stretchiness of that scroll. It's going to ramp up in a smooth way. But I think it's all about small movements. Like the way I'm resting my hands now is exactly the way I was resting my hands. Hands crossed, one hand like on my legs, on my knee, and just tapping and gazing and tapping and doing small swipes left and right. And that was enough to navigate the entire UI.
Since it's an audio podcast, I'm going to say that Norm was moving his hands less than he would have if he was moving a mouse, I would think.
That's right.
Yeah. Did you get any false positives, or did it fail to read a gesture at any point? Like, how accurate?
Yeah, it did fail to read a gesture occasionally with, I think, occlusion. I was worried that it would lose tracking like above your head because there are no cameras, but even at head level, it was fine. It didn't detect when I put it behind my head, obviously. But I think they don't want people's hands to be up above their heads and behind their heads. Like, they don't want big movements. They want
a young person's problem, movements. Norm. Most of us, once you get a certain age, they don't go
I'm
back
very
there
sedentary.
Anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they think I think they think it's something that will improve over time. Also,
so
they can just train and improve.
So, how when you're looking at your hands and pass through, you're seeing a 3D representation of your hands. Are you seeing ghost hands?
You're seeing probably a reprojection. So I think there's a 3D model that they have. They don't show the 3D model, but then they graph the video wrap around it because I do see some of the edges. So that's to say that there's occlusion. Your hands, when you put your hands over icons, when you see yourself in the full VR/immersive environments, you do still see your hands and arms. They are separating your hands based on probably the depth sensor and as well as the camera vision, and then remodeling that in real time so that they know your hands are the things in front of you. That near field is always there.
But are they showing a scan of your hands, or are they showing?
They're showing a video. It's video graphed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's video. Yeah. It's not the personas. It's not like, wrapped, textured. It's video.
Okay. Hands are hard for machine learning, it turns out too. So who knew?
What's the nature of the immersive environments? Like, they use the term captured when they talked about them, but I mean, I assume they're 3D rendered, but I mean, is there photogrammetry or something? Like they're not.
I think it's photogrammetry. I think so. Yeah.
Okay. They're not 3D video.
No. It's not stereo video. And I think some people are going to get confused because they did show 3D video and they've built custom 3D stereo rigs to film, kind of like your Felix and Paul, like high quality, like 8K video. So they had a reel of that, kind of again selling like, this is the immersive level video stuff. And this felt very meta, like from a couple of years ago, pushing like, this is the kind of video content you could see, Alicia Keys playing a concert just for you. Like, yeah, we've seen all this stuff.
Nobody wants video content, man. You don't.
Yeah, and the quality's good, right? The stereo is great, and some people will be wowed by it. But the rendered environments felt like what Valve was doing back in 2016 with
their Steam Home stuff and all that.
Yeah, the Steam Home stuff, which is like photogrammetry mixed with some geometry, textured geometry.
Yeah. The question I have is if you're going to take over somebody's sensorium to make them watch a video, if you pick up your phone, can you see your phone in your hand when you have your phone in your hand?
That's a really good question. I did not do that. I did not interact with objects while in the immersive VR environments. I suspect it would not pass through. That you would just be looking. It would confuse the. But it like if somebody walks into your space when you're in one of those environments, they'll pop into your space, right? They will, and that's because it recognizes that they're using machine learning. So maybe they'll do some machine learning for the hand and near field stuff too,
but only for their products.
right. You pick up an Android phone, and it's a garbled mess. It's Black Mirror. It's blacked out, right? A black box.
Surface tablet just has a big poo emoji on it.
Yeah, you pick up the Android tablet, and it's an Apple Store addressed to the nearest Apple Store.
Yeah. Right. Okay, so gestures, on-screen keyboard. Did you get to use an on-screen keyboard?
Nope. No, and it's the same thing where didn't get to use virtual desktop or on-screen keyboard. I think either that stuff wasn't ready, or that they were afraid that it would distract from how awesome the gesture interface was. I think they wanted all the takeaways to be, this is auto magical.
They're not going to show you anything that is not. Like in this early context, 6+ months before they start selling them, they're only going to show you stuff that is going to leave you super. It's the equivalent. Like they had to have looked at the Vive demo that Valve did in 2015 at GDC and be thinking, we have to prevent like that. That's the experience they're trying to mimic, because that is I think that remains in my head the god tier VR demo of all the stuff that we saw prior to launch. That was like, this is the one that changed the way I thought about this.
It was something truly different, right? Yeah. It was perfect motion tracking, 6 degrees motion tracking, full body. And here I think it's the gesture and the clarity of the screen.
Do you use the knob for anything other than hitting home button and scrolling in and out of the different interfaces?
I didn't. Okay. I'm not sure if that can be customized. I don't see why not, because I don't think, it could be context dependent, right? You're not going to be fading in a virtual environment at all times.
Yeah.
So like it wasn't for volume control for apps. I tried to use it for volume control, and then I use a slider bar for that. And then there's only one other button on the top of it, which is to capture, immersive video / photos, stereo video and photos.
And they didn't let you do that either, right?
They didn't let me capture anything, so I just got to review some pre-generated memories.
Oh, did you feel
direct from
really
the memory
deeply
maker
connected to those moments?
Yeah, I felt like I was, I was the chosen one. It was like a Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah, I was going to say it's like there's real, like your secret computer girlfriend lives inside that button, Norm. They didn't the keyboard and trackpad stuff. It seemed like that was tied to the Mac experience, right? Like you probably aren't using a physical keyboard and trackpad to interface with this thing.
I'm sure you could. I don't think there's any reason why you wouldn't be able to have, if that's the easiest thing for you and you wanted to use the built-in headset Safari browser all the time, because this doesn't require an iPad, doesn't require a MacBook. Like you're supposed to be able to do all these, the Vision OS applications, including Safari in headset, and they have to let people use physical keyboards. I don't think those physical keyboards are going to be like, because they believe in the video pass-through so strongly. I don't think they're going to have like the digitally tracked version like Meta does when it.
Yeah, they'll just let you see it and put your hands on it and it just works.
Exactly.
What about let's see? You didn't do any gamepad stuff, I'm assuming, because Apple.
No. Yeah.
So can we talk about the actual demos, I guess, then?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So the photos thing, they started you with photos?
Yep. Started with photos. A grid of photos, with some dynamic grid, some larger than others. Pulled it up, and if these were photos taken with an iPhone, they looked amazing. Like it wasn't like I've done so many VR UI demos, like VR photo albums or Air photo albums, where the photos look good in thumbnail form, but once they scale up, you can tell there's not enough like filtering on these. Like there's not enough memory bandwidth to put the fullest resolution up on full screen. And here it was the full resolution.
This is the benefit of putting a real processor in this thing, right?
And real memory. Yeah. Real memory bandwidth. Yep.
I wonder also if the contrast between the low res real world and the high res digital asset, it benefits here. It makes it pop out more from the background. It's like everything gets FOV'd out or depth of fielded out in the real world, and your digital memories seem somehow better and more real than the real world.
No, I mean, I take a ton of photos. I'm pretty stickler for when it comes to pixel peeping and looking at this stuff. Like I was so skeptical of the panoramic photos. So one of the things you can, all your panoramas, now you can really put them in film full screen. I'm like, if I take one of these panoramas, I know those are typily like the dynamic range isn't usually great on those. If you blow them up, they're not going to look that great. And it didn't look like I was in like a photogrammetry environment. It looked like a banner. It looked like, an E3, EA's booth at E3, like around you, a halo ring of imagery, but it was clear throughout. It didn't look like they had downsampled it.
Okay. Did those videos, the 3D videos that they showed in the video, so they showed it was like a birthday scene. They showed a couple of things, but they showed a guy with the headset on recording the kid blowing up birthday candles, which just really dystopian as hell. And then when they showed you watching that, you watched, it was like you were looking into a 3D vignette almost, is what the perception I had from watching the video. Was that how it worked in real life, or did they kind of pop out, or was there somewhere in between?
No, 100% a vignette. It's a framed vignette. And typically when you take 3D photos or 3D video, right, you're talking about two spherical images that then get stitched together. And when you view them in a quote unquote first person perspective, which is the ideal way to view them, it fills your whole field of view. Right?
Yeah.
These didn't fill your whole field of view. And I think they intentionally kind of framed them using a vignette so that it would be like looking into a window into the picture, as opposed to you being immersed in the picture fully. I think they did that for image quality purposes. They did that to give some type of extra processing for, some type of fake parallax. And I completely agree. Like, it's dystopian. Like, it's. I was thinking after the fact. I didn't even talk about it in my video. But like MPBHD talked about it extensively. He hated it because all he could imagine was like the dad at the birthday party. Everyone's, it's the next level version of putting your phone in front of your face as opposed to looking at your kid blowing out the candles. Here, like, I don't want to see the real the real photons of my kids. I want to, my future me will thank me for this if I put the headset on and capture the volumetric info or the stereo information.
Yeah.
And then everyone's just seeing your like avatar persona eyes, like with a big smile on your face, right? Like that does sound pretty dystopian.
At the same time, like, I took a bunch of pictures of my kid when she was a really little baby with the Google glasses, because that's when we had them. And like, I look at those pictures now sometimes, and they're a totally unique perspective, because it's what I saw when I was holding my infant kid in my arms. And that's a, like, I'm almost in tears. It's a powerful.
No. It is. And it is super powerful. And I was talking to someone after this, and I've done the same thing with 360 video or 180 VR video. So we've done some 180 VR capture. I tested, and I have Lenovo made this off the shelf camera that could do stereo photos or stereo video just with the press of a button that you would use in their Mirage headsets. Insta360 made a camera called the Evo that you could use, and they're small cameras, 2 sensors, two lenses. You press a button, it records a 5K video, process it, and we did that. We actually put it on a tiny tripod. And with our first kid, we recorded a couple minute long video every month for the first year of his life. And it was easy enough to use that I could then take that video file, just the file name, throw it on the Oculus Quest, and actually literally relive that moment from the camera's perspective.
Yeah.
See in 3D full immersive video, like my baby as he was crawling on the floor to camera, a moment that I will never get to live again. And for anyone who's a parent, like, you don't remember the first year of your kid's life really, because you're just trying to survive. Like, so I've, in quiet moments, put on my headset and relive those minutes. And like, I'm choking up talking about it because it is is maybe the most important digital asset in my life right now. Those files.
So you guys are coming around on the dystopian features.
Well, no, the difference is,
and I'm just saying, like,
Norm could put the camera on the ground. It didn't have to have the headset on his face.
That's a big difference. Yes. That's absolutely a big difference. But I think they're trying. That's the promise they're trying to sell. And I think they've undersold that, because that was the most un-Apple thing about this announcement, is that they ended it with like, this is the most powerful personal electronics, the most highly advanced electronics device, right? That they've ever, personal electronics device, whatever they called it. And that was such a cold way of describing this thing, because everything that Apple makes is about the human emotional connection that it gives you. And I really believe that, if the way they've developed the video capture and the way you're able to experience those memories, like for the people who buy this headset, like those are memories that they'll treasure forever and maybe worth $3,500 to them. And if you view it from that lens, then, it's like if someone, if you had a kid in 2005, right. And someone told you, I could give you for $3,000 an iPhone 7, right, to take photos of your kid, before the world was ready for smartphone cameras, and you would have thousands of photos of your kid before, smartphones came out with cameras in 2008, 2009, you'd take it, you pay for it. And they didn't sell that aspect of it, but I think that's what I would use it for.
It's also worth noting that if you believe the idea that this is actually just a stopgap until they can get to true AR that doesn't have a giant weird fake screen of your face on it, then like this problem somewhat goes away.
I mean, the other thing is there's plenty of room on the bottom of the iPhone to put another camera that's about eyeball distance apart. Right, so, they like, there's this is a tractable problem.
Yeah.
This is a question I should have understood from the videos and presentations, but it really wasn't clear. When you place something like that, like, are there two contexts, or is there a context where you can place a window in physical space in your room? And then is there a HUD aspect that kind of tracks with you, or is it all one or all the other, or something that I'm not thinking of?
It's all one. It's all the physical space. So it's all relative to how they've mapped your room. You drag things. So there's a long bar at the bottom, and if you look at it and hold your fingers together, you've basically gripped this thing, and then you kind of move it in the physical space, kind of like a 3D mouse would do, and put it further away from you or put it closer to you. At the same time, on the bottom right-hand corner of these windows, you can also then resize. And so we talk a lot about this in VR and AR, but like scaling, there's two ways of scaling things. You can scale things by increasing the size of it, or you can scale things by bringing them closer or further away. And you have to be able to do both. And it does change the way things are rendered, except text. Text, it feels like they've locked it in. So even though you can move your Safari window further away or move it closer, they will scale the DPI of the text. So it will always be a certain readable size. That is a very
iOS solution to that problem. They've been doing the same thing. Like they've been rendering images at a different DPI than text for 15 years, 10 years at this point almost. So
it's what they're good at.
Yep. So like, what happens if you try to place something beyond a wall?
I think it wouldn't let you. So it's not like you're going to hit a visual boundary. But I think the further you push, it'll just stop going. It'll stop because like you see a wall there. Why would you want to push the object beyond that wall? Because it won't do. Yeah,
it is mapping the environment. Like it is
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
I wonder if they relax that when you're in an immersive environment because the virtual space is bigger than your actual room.
That's a really good question. I didn't try that. That's a really good question. Yeah.
Like, could you move the movie screen when you were in the movie environment? Okay.
No.
Interesting. Okay, so you did the photo thing. They did some desktop stuff, like just using apps and things like that.
No,
Not
so
really?
It was they didn't have any desktop stuff per se. It was all, you think about they're all iOS, app.
Sorry, Springboard, whatever you call the iOS desktop.
Freeform was exactly the Freeform was Freeform is a specific app, like a productivity app that then you bring up with whiteboard elements.
It's a digital dry erase.
Yeah.
And you were able to draw and stuff on that.
No, they didn't let me draw it. They didn't let me really interact with it. They let someone else interact with it over a FaceTime call. Again, I think they wanted to keep the interaction with it mostly manipulating windows with the gestures.
Okay, and then but you got a little taste of the communication with. Was the other person also wearing the headset? Then they weren't.
Yes, and it was their persona.
And how was that a whole experience? Like, so the persona is the 3D the 3D machine generated. By the way, I wonder what the carbon cost on generating those avatars is, but that's a question for the future.
Well, they do it in headset. It's not generated in the cloud. It's done in headset. The machine, it was machine learned. So just like, speech to tech isn't,
but generating the model to do that cost is where the carbon cost is, right?
Sure, it's the power consumption on the head.
Yeah, the power.
On the
headset. The power consumption of the massive
training.
computing training that has to happen in order for that to work. Yeah. Anyway,
sunk costs.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the planet will.
Look, when they sell 8 billion of these headsets and they'll amortize that over 8 billion, it'll be practically nothing. When they sell 100,000, it's a little bit more. Anyway,
yeah.
I'm guessing the answer is no here, considering the nature of this demo sounds pretty limited. They weren't kind enough to let you see your persona out of the headset at some point.
I never was able to generate my persona.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the scan I did was just for the fit, just to determine which interface to use. That person's persona I presume it looked like them. I have no idea what they look like. Maybe this is the Black Mirror thing because, hijack personas, right? What if, but they'll do retinal scanning. So I'm
going to steal your eyeball and then I can log in as you, Norm.
Right. Minority Report style. Yeah. Exactly. Steal my eyeball, log in as me. Because the eye tracking doesn't do face scanning inside the headset.
Yeah.
But they were emoting, right? They were emoting with their hands, maybe over gesturing a little bit, probably to accentuate that tracking.
How did they show, like, upper body, or was it head and hands?
It was head and hands. It was head and hands, vignetted, so you weren't like generating the back of the head. It was kind of faded out. So there's a video clip of it, a little bit grainy in terms of the video processing or whatever filter they put on top. Again, just to not make it look too much like a rendered character. But they were smiling, moving their eyebrows, blinking. This is like their version of codec avatars that the Apple has, or Meta has the exact same. That Abrash has been working on forever.
It had real Blade Runner 2049 vibes. The demo that they showed in the presentation.
Well, in the Horizon workrooms experiences I've done using the Quest Pro with eye tracking turned on. Eye tracking is really powerful for avatar communication. So even when the avatars are cartoonish, even when they're disembodied like torsos, right, which is heads and floating hands, eye movement is so important as an extra layer of cues of communication cue on top of head movement. That you can get so much of just what a person's thinking about and how they're talking. And this well, of course, you've done avatars.
Yeah.
So it works. I think there's maybe like a minimum bar that the Horizon Workroom stuff, the Meta stuff does with eye tracking on the Quest Pro to get you some level of increased communication, right? But it's glitchy at times. And even today with the Horizon Workroom stuff and eye tracking, sometimes the eyelids will go blink, sometimes eyes will dip down, and like if people can look weird. I saw some of that. Yeah.
It has to not look weird ever is the rule. Like the moment this gets weird, it all breaks down. The other thing that everybody always believed, we found at Foo, and it was just 3 of us, so 4 of us at one point. So like it wasn't a lot of people. Shoulders are really important because you do a lot of talking with your shoulders, like how you're moving your hands is reflected in the shoulders, and that conveys way more information than anybody ever realizes.
I bet they're faking that. I forget. I'll have to look back at the video clip they showed of that persona FaceTime call.
I felt like he had shoulders, the guy that they showed.
If he had shoulders, they could absolutely be faking, because that's a pretty easy thing to machine learn just based on some head movement and mouth movement, and they can
Well, if you have hand and forearm, it's really straightforward. Hand,
exactly.
forearm,
Right. There's some IK, and they could improve on it. Yeah.
The other thing I noticed is that the faces, like the eyes were very expressive. The mouth was very expressive. The cheeks, like the cheekbones and the kind of there's a bazillion muscles under your cheeks that make you smile and frown and all those faces, and like let you shift your mouth from side to side and wiggle your nose if you can wiggle your nose, and like eyebrows and that forehead movement weren't super represented in what we could see. It didn't seem as advanced as I think you saw years ago a Facebook thing where they were doing electroconductive tracking on your face to see what was to measure the movement of muscles directly under your skin and represent facial stuff that way.
EKG, EKG sensing on a ring. Put a necklace on that will detect all your subtle
collar
muscle.
It's like collar
exactly. It's a collar.
Norm,
that's right. Well, yes, it's a collar.
Yeah.
It's battle royale. Think about like a long term, right? Like if you generate your avatar, are they going to require you to refresh your avatar every couple of years just to be like accurate to who you are? Or are you going to be talking to someone who never wants to age? Like I have the avatar from 2024 when I first bought the Vision Pro, and I'm never going to age, and this is who I am. Like that's pretty dystopian. I'm
going to point out that your Google avatar right now is from 2013 or 2014, Norm.
Forever young, Will.
Okay, so the dry erase board app. What else did they show you?
So entertainment, right? So the Iger was on stage in the video.
That was in the video. Imagine a World ad if I've ever seen one. It was some real AT&T 1993 business.
Oh my God! Yeah, the best storytelling company in the world, combined with the most highest tech company in the world.
But it was that also looked like all bullshit. Like everything he showed looked like it was tech demo.
Yeah, is this where the certified volumetric environments came from?
Yeah, that's where. I mean, think about the expense. Like, why is Disney Plus on Vision Plus going to cost more, or Vision OS going to cost more to use so that you can watch?
It's going to be $1,000 a month. Like, what's the install base going to be for this thing that's going to justify this kind of content generation?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. To be able to watch Mandalorian on Tatooine, like
some bad menus. Yeah.
I'm sure they're thinking of all the business cases and all the promises that, and Apple's probably not funding this, right? They play hardball. They have the advantage that, Meta doesn't have, or Meta has to pay for content partners.
Yeah.
While Apple can say, get in early and we'll give you a keynote spotlight and featured priority placement and you can tap into the early user base.
Was it confirmed that all the stuff Disney is doing will be exclusive to Apple?
No, they didn't say exclusive. Yeah.
There's also a business relationship with Apple and Disney because of the Pixar connection, right? Or is that just through Jobs? I don't remember how that worked.
More of a spiritual connection.
Yeah, exactly. I think spiritual. Yeah.
Yeah. We've seen over the years a lot of, hey, you can watch Avatar, whichever incarnation you're talking about, on a giant screen. It's an 80-inch screen, 5 feet from your head. Did it feel like those, or did it feel different?
Avatar was the best version of Avatar I've seen outside of theaters. I would be happy, and Avatar is a franchise where I dream about the time I got to, the first time watching Avatar 2 in full high frame rate, IMAX or Dolby Vision, and no home theater experience can bring that back, because you don't get 3D movies at home really anymore. You don't get high frame rate as a distribution. And this was high frame rate 3D with whatever bit rate and resolution they were streaming at or had it loaded up at, felt like the movie theater experience. I was happy. Okay. As an Avatar stan, I was happy.
Okay.
And that's the bar for cinema.
Did you feel like you were on Pandora, Norm?
I felt like I was underwater, among the water people.
Can you get a special mode where Jim Cameron is like, you got to do it 3 more times?
Right. Yeah, I could scroll the crown dial, and just see the dots on their faces. Peel the layers back. Right?
Exactly.
Can I get the 3D experience of him staple gunning someone's phone to the wall, which I have heard about him doing on set before?
What about they had a VR-y thing, kind of.
What do you mean a VR-y
thing? The dinosaur thing.
Yes. Yeah. So this this was your kind of standard, like, view into a different world, turn the wall into a portal AR demo. That with Magic Leap, they had that Dr. Gorbort game, the Weta Workshop game, which had a lot of this. It would scan the room and based on the size of the room, dynamically open a portal, and you do like a blasting game where aliens would come in. But that was all like what you would still call mobile graphics. The registration here was perfect, of course. They were a controlled environment, a flat wall with nothing but like 2 picture frames on it.
Convenient.
Very convenient. They did things like, they did shadow casting on the wall and like dynamic light. Portal opened up and it looked like, from a graphic standpoint, from like
did you
a video
launch an
game
app
graphic
for this?
standpoint. I did.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an app. Yeah. So like you imagine there's an app, you click in from the home screen, it automatically knows which wall to put it on. And then the wall opened up, the portal opened up, and I was looking into a prehistoric landscape, and a dinosaur walked from that landscape into the living room environment, and it looked like a PC graphics, full, super high resolution, extremely crisp game asset.
Okay. Could you interact with it at all, or is it just for looking at, basically?
No, I got so close to it that it started fading away.
Okay.
Right. So it wouldn't let you kind of bury your head into it and see into the model. So it kind of, there's like a little barrier that would push it back, like render it back, push the render boundary back. And it walked around and then, swung its tail around, and combined with I think the sound also had a lot to do with it. And the speakers were really good. And this is a really good use case of that. But the spatial audio of that creature, the fidelity of it, looking up to right at its like skin and eyes, and the size of it, it just felt like it was in that space.
So yeah, we haven't talked about sound at all yet. I've been kind of blown away by the spatial sound with using like AirPod Pros with an Apple TV, stuff like that. How were the sound pipes, or whatever they're calling the headband with the speakers on? Did it isolate you from the outside world at all, or was it you can hear the world and you can hear your stuff?
Yeah. So they're not on ear; they're on top of ear. They're on the band itself. So it's kind of like what Meta's doing with having speakers above. They showed like a cross-section view of what these speakers are. So there is a big volume there. So you can actually get some bass, right? They're pumping a lot of air through it. But the 6 microphones they have on the headset, plus the calibration that you're doing. So whatever processing you're doing, where you scan the location of your ear relative to, I guess, your nose. I think they want to see the distance between your ear and where the microphones would be, is what they're really scanning for. Is then they're doing sampling nonstop, because every environment you're in, if you're in a big living room, if you're in a small bedroom, the sound's going to bounce differently. And so it's kind of like when you're setting up surround sound and you run through a calibration, they're doing that nonstop every time you enter a new space.
That's what that dedicated chip is for. One of the things it does, I assume.
And that's what makes those objects, when the virtual objects walk around that room space, echo and feel like they're actually in that location. Oh,
you were getting echoes from things happening in the space?
Yeah.
And the movie sound was similar?
I don't know if the movie sound was bouncing off. I didn't notice that. Okay. It just felt like surround sound. But it sounded big. It sounded super crisp and clear.
The movie sound was was it a 3D movie? Was it a 3D version of Avatar?
Yeah. 3D high frame rate.
Did you tilt your head to the side to see what happened?
Did not tilt my head to the side.
Because
what happened.
Often, because they're left, right eyes, when you tilt your head to the side, weird things happen typically.
Oh, you're right. For you're talking about the video.
The video, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was curious how they're handling, because with the depth captured video, they have the information to maybe work around. Anyway,
there's no depth capture in that video feed though.
Right. That's my point.
No. I think stereo would probably. It would probably look weird.
It'd have the same skewing problem it always has. I meant with the depth captured stuff you captured with the depth cameras, you theoretically can work around. Anyway, we're almost out of time. We've been going for a long time, Norm. I appreciate you taking the time. Can we ask some more questions? Keep
on asking more questions. Okay. More questions. If you stop asking questions, I will die. So I'll fall asleep for at least for finally.
It's okay. So more general stuff. Did you? Apple's really good at making prototype hardware. At this point, they have dedicated incredible resources to that. Did the hardware feel like it was done? Did it feel like hand-built stuff? Did it feel like, where did it fall on that spectrum between like a thing that comes off the line in China and a thing that was built by Johnny Ive in a back room 10 years ago?
It felt like if you went to the Apple store next year and paid for this is exactly what you would get. It looked like, even though this is pre-production hardware, it looked like production hardware, the fit and finish. And like from the knitting. Yeah. The headband, the way the headband separates is the same type of easy release clasps that like the watch band. So there's a lot of DNA stuff that they've learned from the watch band and development that makes all that kind of accessorizing. I'm sure there'll be maybe third-party accessories at some point. But like everything was like pull tab, easy release, magnetic click, because it's modular to a certain extent.
The thing that I am always kind of, especially on the watch lately, like the difference in the materials on the watch over the last 10 years is kind of incredible. Like they do such a like the stretchy watch bands, which have a whole host of problems because they get bigger over time, whatever, like feel so good compared to every other, like all the knockoff stretchy watch bands. It's like they pay attention to materials in a way that I think everybody else has a hard time doing. The adjustment for the strap how does that work? How do you make it bigger or smaller?
It's a dial on the back right side. And so they want to keep the back of the head strap soft and flush so that you can use this lying down or rested on a chair. So the dial's on the back right side. There'll be multiple sizes of headband as well for different shaped heads. I was using the medium sized one. And the top strap, which they didn't show, is an optional thing, but I couldn't confirm if it was
like the temple area.
Exactly. Clips on right at where the solid strap part connects to the cloth strap.
You have over different levels of different hardware had motion sickness issues. Did you have anything at all? Did you feel anything weird?
No motion sickness, nor did I get any like the image tearing or kind of, when I'm looking at the display, the thing I'm trying to look for most is like seeing the artifacts of it being a display. Right?
Yeah.
Subpixels and
chromatic aberrations around the edges.
Yeah. And that's more lensing, right? Yeah. And that's a lens artifact. And there's like a very minor, so it's very clear across the entire field of view. You get lateral movement. You can, like, when the headset drooped down, if I moved around, I could see a little bit of like the distortions on the periphery. But the only thing that made it look like a display, aside from the fact that this was like video and rendered objects, was I could see like some subpixel light differences, the shimmer of like the not aliasing per se, but some like the color separations when I was manipulating or looking around a 3D model. So like it was just so crisp and sharp. I don't know why they're not calling it Retina, because I would feel comfortable at this stage calling it Retina, because I think the pixels are imperceptible. If you look at like what they called the iPhone 4, right?
Yeah.
As Retina, right? It was, you could see the pixels on iPhone 4 if you like squinted. Here, squinting, I couldn't see the pixels.
These are OLED screens, is that right?
Yeah, micro OLED screens, and the assumption it's a Sony manufacturer. They've had all the years of making these micro OLEDs to put in the digital EVFs, right? The electric viewfinders of their cameras. And no word on spec. I think people are scouring the internet, like looking for like display convention releases and like where the industry reports on where these panels are. And I've seen like someone put out a 3840 by 2160 panel, and I've seen someone most recent convention do like 3840 by like 3600, but the pixel numbers don't match up exactly when they say 23 million pixels, and the math says it should be roughly 3840 by 3000 pixels.
So you didn't see any hint of like the Mira that you get in like the PlayStation VR 2 on and some other OLEDs?
No. And Mira is like splotchiness, right? Yeah. That's like kind of the shimmer. No, none of that.
Interesting.
None of that. Huh. Yeah.
I wonder. I have no idea what the difference is. I thought that was just inherent to OLED at that range, but maybe there's I don't know.
You should describe Mira for people who don't know what it is.
It's kind of like he said, it is a little hard to put your finger on. It's like if you have like a full white screen, like it's really evident in the PSVR 2 to me. That's kind of the only artifacting they're lower res as well, but like it's just kind of a splotchiness against a uniform color background. It's not like super pronounced, but if you like, my brain tunes it out after 2 minutes, but it is there.
Dirty screen. It's not shimmering. It's just like it's dirty,
almost like dirty. Yeah,
yeah, like water's drying. Has dried, on it.
How fatigued? Did you notice? I mean, you were only in the headset for what, about a half hour?
30 minutes. Yeah,
30 minutes. How did you get a sense of fatigue? It's not probably enough time to get a good idea.
No. Yeah, not enough time. I want to be in there longer. If that says anything. I think they probably chose 2-hour battery life, probably factoring in not just weight of the unit and form factor of that battery unit, but also probably It's funny, right? Because like they would say you can watch a full movie in this, and 2 hours of battery life is not long enough for Avatar.
That wouldn't get you through any of the MCU movies that have come out in the last 2 years.
Yeah,
I feel like the battery pack is the last main thing that we haven't covered because they sure went out of their way to not show that thing during the stage presentation. Does it fit comfortably in a back pocket? Although you probably would want to sit on it. I don't like where do you put it?
It's thicker than a phone. It's like kind of like your Anker battery. It's like it's.
Is it like the old HTC one that came with the wireless HTC kit?
Those are real nice and high capacity. I would say it's not as thick as that. It's taller and narrower.
And it also has the charger, like you like that's passed through if you plug in, right?
That is a really good question. I was just thinking about that earlier today. I tried to see how I could disconnect the battery from the headset because it's a circular connector on the left temple.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like a MagSafe puck where it easily pops off. And I didn't know if there was like a turning mechanism. They didn't let me disconnect it, obviously. So a couple questions that I wasn't able to get answers to is one, is there battery inside the headset for hot swapping? So if you bought multiple batteries, could I disconnect and connect? And two, if you were to run it to shore power, like does it, like you asked, does it go through the USB port on the battery? Because I didn't see a USB port on the headset itself.
So I can't remember, somebody else I read, it might have been MKBHD, it might have been the Verge article, said specifically if you plug in order to plug it into mains power, you plug in the battery. So the battery has to be in the chain somewhere.
Which is interesting, which tells me that the battery isn't just a battery.
That's it.
They're doing power management there, and those power management chips are often a source of heat. For a lot of electronic devices, not just the cells of the battery heating up. It's the thing that's regulating that power. And so if they're taking that off of the headset, heat, which I didn't mention in the video, was not a factor. I explicitly tried testing for that. And there had been rumors ahead that, they were struggling with power consumption and things overheating in the demos. I put my hands around the headset because there are fans or there are
vents at the top and bottom,
vents,
right?
Exactly, vents. I put my hands on the top and bottom during the dinosaur demo because that's where it was rendering full screen, high textures, lots of polygons. And not only did I not hear, I didn't feel airflow and definitely didn't get a sense of it getting hot. It wasn't like cold to the touch, but it wasn't like aggressively warming up. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the two big questions I have and the things that make me I think, to me, the demos that they showed made me think that this is a device they expect people to use sitting at a desk, sitting on a couch, not so much walking around in the world. This doesn't seem like a thing that they expect you to carry around in the world with you.
They do. I asked about that. I said, is this meant for, and they were like, all use cases, all walking down the street.
I mean, they hyped up how great it is to travel with in the stage presentation. Maybe
they think it's a new executive laptop, like that. Remember the old pre-MacBook Air, super thin, like Toshiba laptops that were like $4,000. Maybe this is that. You didn't notice any fan noise though?
No fan noise. I could tell, and I think there is a fan. I think they said there was a fan inside.
They probably can cancel that out. Honestly,
good point.
Yeah. What about refresh rate on the headset? Do you have a sense of that? I'm sure they didn't give a number.
They didn't. I asked. They didn't give a number. They said more details to come sometime in the future. I felt it was 90.
Okay.
Other people have said 120.
Yeah, MKBHD said 120.
I can tell the difference between 90 and 120. I can tell that. definitely not 72. I can like this felt better than 72. But even 90 can feel better if the pixel response is fast enough.
It's crisp.
If it's crisp. I feel like it's 90. I find it hard to believe. It's both my experience with this, but also just my awareness of how hard it is to make these displays. I find it hard to believe that they found a next generation panel that would not only be a generation higher in terms of pixel density for whatever 1.3 or whatever 1 inch panel size they're using, and also be higher refresh rate than what's on the market.
So the one question I had is like, because they're building the display controller and the video renderer and the whole thing, they can do some weird stuff that other people probably can't. Like they could be doing variable refresh rates inside the panel where they're refreshing the center fovea pixels faster than the edge pixels or something like that, which could also give you that perception difference.
Yeah. And it is foveated rendered, but imperceptible. Like
you didn't see the lag. Like on some of the early foveated stuff, I remember seeing like it just seemed like a little smudgy it seemed like there was a weird shimmer around the area that was being rendered high, and you didn't get any of that.
Nothing. I mean, foveated is such an interesting thing because we've heard at conferences, one, how tough is it to do because the more tightly foveated you want, like it means the better the eye tracking has to be. And
foveated means you only are rendering the part of your, like the density of vision sensor receptors on your light receptors on your eyeball is concentrated in the fovea of the back of your eye. And that by only rendering the part that you're looking at, you can spend all of your GPU compute on a relatively small area of the screen. Sorry, no.
by scaling, right? By having a higher density of pixels and maybe desampling for the parts outside of it, then you get some efficiencies that way. And from what I understood from the talks I've heard at VR conferences, it's hard because I move so quickly, right? So to get any imperceptible benefits, you either have to expand, you have to have better eye tracking, better prediction, or expand the rendering space to a point where your benefits are really minor. But if their eye tracking is that good, and maybe it makes more sense because there's maybe a bigger range of rendering here. It's not mobile rendering like they really like the go from 0 to 100. It's a bigger gap, so they do get more benefits that way. But they were really proud of it being using foveated rendering.
I mean, it seems like the right way to go for anything that's based on ARM silicon, even fast ARM silicon.
It's a necessity. I think, and PSVR 2 has foveated rendering as well, and that one is good enough that you don't notice it. Like I couldn't notice it, but if you mirror the image out to a monitor, people watching that mirrored image 100% notice it. They can see the edges of where you're not looking, the textures going lower res.
All right. Any more burning hardware questions? Because I do want to take 5 minutes to talk to him about the mothership before he has to go.
Yeah, I've got a couple more. Did the battery pack have a clip on it for women?
Nope.
Boo.
Flat butter. Why not a caddy? You gotta give a pack caddy.
Well, I mean, look, you need to have some place you can put it because people don't have pockets, right?
Don't you want to see like the Apple designed like artisanal fanny pack?
It's going to be a
holster.
sling bag.
It's a holster. It's a holster. Yeah.
What about the interface? Is the interface going to mess up makeup and stuff?
You mean the actual physical
face
thing?
Interface where it hits your face?
Yeah. So there's a pad that's just the ring, right? That in addition to the spongy facial interface, there's the space pad, the spacer pad. It's full contact on your face. So if you're wearing makeup, it's gonna probably be. It's
gonna be bad. Did they talk about which parts of that interface are washable? Can you take that stuff off and wash it?
Yes. The spacer and the pad are both washable.
And the back strap as well.
Yes, and the back strap as well.
Okay, that's a like.
Well, actually, I don't want to speak for the back strap. It's my assumption because of the fabric, but they explicitly did say. The front
spacers.
The front,
okay.
Yeah.
That's good. That's something at least. Yeah. My last thing is really that they have spent the last like 4 years making us feel bad for how much time we spend on our phones since they added screen time to the devices. And I get the thing every Sunday morning. It's like, yo, you spent like 8 hours a day on your phone, dog. You should be doing something else with your life. And
did you see the thing they announced in iOS or iPad OS? Too close to screen detection.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah,
it's right. Like 30 minutes before they announced the Vision Pro, they announced a feature for iPad OS where if your kids are too close to the screen, it will know and give you an alert and a warning to back up from the screen, which is like half of what I do when my kids watch TV anyway, is tell them to back away, too close. And yet, this is a screen that essentially is like
rest on your eyeballs.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, did they reconcile that at all? Like, this is a thing that takes over your whole sensorium. It feels weird. Okay.
No.
Norm's shaking his head.
They did not reconcile that.
Everyone ended their stuff with "No one should buy this thing unless you're a journalist who's going to write about it a lot, or you're an app developer." Is that your I can't have that. I can't make that assessment right now. Okay.
Yeah, especially falling into one of those camps.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know where you land, Norm.
Okay. I will say this: I did the mental exercise ahead of the event. Right. If it does, based on all the rumors and based on what I know and expect from Apple products and the rumor price being $3,000, what is my secret hope of what price it would be? Where could I see myself spending the money? At what level?
Yeah.
And I told myself I would spend $2,000 to buy a headset from Apple. And my hope was that, like the iPad, which was that launched rumored at $1,000 and they launched at $500, the hope was that the $3,000 number was a intentional leak to then surprise people and say it was lower. And then they went the opposite direction.
They surprised people for sure.
They definitely surprised people. You've seen all the TikTok, right? The clip of the Apple campus when the video played and they announced a price because they caveated. They ended the whole keynote with, think about how much you spend on a TV, a computer, all these things at your home, and we're launching this at $34.99, and you can hear and feel.
Look,
1,000 people groaning.
I changed my mind. I don't want to hear about the mothership anymore.
It's Norm. It's 3/5 of an Apple Cinema display. It's a bargain. You can have all the display space in the world.
I mean, this is the realm of people who are not buying this to be their next phone, to be even their next computer, right? Like there's certainly a place where people are spending a couple $1,000s because it is a thing that makes them money, or it's a thing that's essential to their livelihood, or for school as a giant purchase, right? Or for gaming. Like certainly people have spent $3,000 plus on gaming for a device that they're going to be using not just for gaming, but like it's their primary way of interacting with the digital world. This moves into, because it's a new field, new territory. Like it goes straight from like the realm of I would save money to buy this to I could buy a car or pay a month of a mortgage.
I literally leased a Bolt for 3 years for about the same amount of money, right?
Yeah.
With the California incentives and all that. It's interesting you say that because like when I was working at Foo, I literally bought 8 different VR headsets, like 8 Vives to do shoots and stuff with. And like, it's expensive, but in the realm of a thing that you're making money as a business doing, $3,500 is kind of it's a drop in the pan if it's a real business, right? If it's supporting even a single developer, $3,500 isn't that much money. It's interesting that they're just doing a big consumer presentation for what is essentially a dev kit, and like their track record with version 0 products or version 1 products is bad. Like the Apple Watch Series 0 didn't last. It lasted like 2 years. The first iPad was great for a year and then immediately a dud. Maybe the fact that they made this a $3,500 dev kit instead of pricing it at a consumer level means that it'll actually last a long time, because it's not like there's a lot of headroom left on silicon to get more performance or displays to get better resolution, or right.
I don't think it'll be obsolete. And I mean, if it's shipping next year, it feels like a 4 or 5 year device. The question is, what is the price point they really want to hit for the person that would be buying an iPhone? every 3 years.
What's the Vision Pro Air cost? Vision Air cost?
Is it $1,500?
I mean,
at that point, what do they get rid of from this device to make it a non-pro version?
Well, the eyeballs go for sure, but the $1,500 device to me says like that means you have a three-way choice between buying a fancy iPad, buying a MacBook, or buying this. And that to me doesn't mean it's a supplement for your MacBook. It means you put a keyboard with it and it replaces your MacBook, right?
I would argue that Apple's has done really well in the past of adding product categories, and then people just end up buying all of them. A lot of people end up buying all of them: watch, AirPods, laptop, iPad, phone, because of the network effects of how they all work together. And certainly some people make, the purchasing decision, but like they've found a way to get people buying new watches every couple of years when the most I ever spent on a watch before 5 years ago was like $50.
$50. Yeah. I mean, I feel like the watch and the AirPods and the phone and the iPad / laptop, I feel like the iPad laptop are filling increasingly the same slot these days. And they're at that same price. Anyway, I don't know. This is like gaming stuff out that's not going to matter for 3 years. But yeah, like, are you excited about this? Did you have dreams about this? Did you wake up this morning thinking about this like we did after the Vive and the first Oculus demos and stuff like that?
I had way more dreams the night before. I had 3 separate dreams about the keynote and it was the version of, showing up to a test without the answers, or I literally had dreams of fumbling the camera gear.
Well, that's a different, like stress dreams about being the only person from your organization having covered Apple events before, like that. It's scary. Because if you mess up, there's no safety net. You're the only one there. You're the only one that can help yourself. I'm like, after we saw the Vive demo at GDC, for the next like 4 or 5 days, we came in and we kept talking about it over and over again. We're like, did you see this part? Oh yeah, I saw that part. And I'm wondering if you're having that same kind of like, are you replaying in your head, trying to figure out what you missed, stuff like that? Or are you just so sleep deprived these days that that's hopeless?
It's only one day after. I mean, if there's any part of the demo that I felt like I'm revisiting, it's honestly the video, the Avatar video. It's like I've done plenty of watching movies, stream from Plex at the highest bit rate, or trying to stream from like Amazon or Netflix in headset. And even though I can get that virtual giant screen, the video quality has always been so low. It's like the same, downsampling or dithering effects, and if they can get the streaming quality because they have, their whole library of Apple TV, and they can work with the content partners to make sure whatever's delivered on here is making the most of that panel. Like I'm, as someone who loves watching movies, like I can't wait.
Well, you have 4 people in your family, so you need $15,000 worth of these, and you'll be good to go. It's interesting to me that they're establishing this as the min spec too. Like starting with really high end hardware means that theoretically in the future. Yeah. Anyway, mothership questions abound. Brad, I'll step out of your way now. Sorry.
3 minutes. What do you got to say?
So first time at Apple Park, right? They had so many people working the event. Right. Yeah. I don't know if this is like some full-time people, some contract, but like even pulling into the garage to park my car, getting there early in the morning was like 20 people with wands directing you to the
Phil
perfect
Schiller
spot.
Front of the line, just lining your car, getting you in.
And then from the moment you get out of the car and you get everything signed in, like the check-in, like security check-in, and most people attending are developers, like green badge developers. We were magenta pink badge media, but the campus was not open for folks, but the walkway around the campus, it's like Disneyland, where when you walk in, there's like a line that you cross. Once you pass through their main reception building and you walk through the pathway, the outside world is gone. Like it's just trees, right? You are in an enclosed garden, utopia, dystopia, cult, whatever you want to call it, where it's just trees on one side, a pathway, and a mothership ring that's massive on this other side. And they let us pretty freely walk around that ring to get to the media room, which is overlooking the big outdoor stage area, the big cafeteria area, and they got tons of people, and everyone just a big smile on their face. I guess they're more for the developers, but cheering to developers. You're here. Kind of had that like we're waited in line at New York for overnight, for 3 nights in a row to buy the first iPhone. That kind of Apple Store energy, right? High fives, people in like same color matching T-shirts. Everyone with big smiles, lots of like concierge folks helping the developers. Ate lunch in their cafeteria. They had like, I think typically they would be cashiers, but they had like 8 different types of food. Your Mediterranean, your Asian food, your grill, and it was all free for developers. And then got to walk down the Steve Jobs Theater. So that's a big, like a miniature, cylindrical glass building, and you descend down the stairs, and famously has those like a big granite staircase where it's not handrails. It's like this carved granite rail system that you walk down, and that's where they had the demo area where you got the photos and the B-roll of the headset. And then they erected a big demo building, like this white building with no doors, kind of open entrance, no videos or photos looking into the building. I wasn't able to even film the ride up to the building, the pathway, but it's where next to where the basketball courts are. And that's where they had like couches set up, kind of like a mini Apple store with some headsets that I couldn't take pictures of there. And then rooms set off to the side where they were giving these private demos in a small, say maybe like 15 foot by 15 foot little room space. Yeah. With a couch.
They had a couple people in the demos with you?
It was one person demoing. So it's just me at a time, but like 2 Apple employees. 2
Apple employees. Yeah. Did you feel like they were watching what you were seeing?
They were. They explicitly said what you see. They had an iPad, and so there's some type of mirroring mode, and because it's their hardware, anytime you do kind of mirroring or recording on a Quest, taking a performance hit.
Yeah,
I guess they were happy to take the performance hit because I didn't notice any slowdown. They could see what I was looking at and help guide the experience.
I wondered about that because that's always the question, right?
Yeah. I don't know if that will be surfaceable to users though.
I'm sure this is documented elsewhere. Does the Ring have any kind of horizontal people mover in it? Because like if you have a regular meeting with somebody on the far side of the Ring, that seems like a lot of wasted travel time.
They employ an army of people with carts. At least they did
Apple carts, or was it like golf carts?
No, it's like golf carts with 6-seaters or 8-seaters, and they had those driving around, people ferrying people around.
Apple car.
Yeah,
those are the real Apple cars.
A lot of glass, whole lot of glass, massive building.
Do you see anybody walk into any windows?
No,
just smash into them, not see them. Okay.
No, and like in the center, that giant like green space is where they film, with the Pride Rainbow for this month. And some people are I think they had like corded off areas. You can get too far into it. And people are still working, even though it's WWDC, people are still working that day. And certainly like zones that you can go into, but it felt like there's a lot of space I could, on the outside at least, walk around after the keynote while waiting for my demo session.
Norm, where can people find you? Where should they go find this video? What socials do you want to send them to?
You can find the video, a 33-minute video, about a 30-minute demo, because I was thinking I had more thoughts than I had demo time on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/tested.
You did a lovely job painting the word picture of the experience. I know it's always hard when they're like, hey, you can't have any B-roll. There's nothing you can show from this. You just have to talk through it. And
oh my God. It was great. Let me tell you, the behind the scenes thing is they messed up the scheduling, and they did not give the notification of what press should do, or at least what digital press maybe should do after the keynote, which was to go to the Steve Jobs Theater and get B-roll. And so I was wandering and eating lunch and chatting with developers for a little bit before my demo. And when I got to my demo, I was like, oh, where can I get B-roll if I can't film the demo? I'm like, oh, you can go to the Steve Jobs Theater. I'm like, when was that supposed to be? I was like, you didn't do that yet? I was like, no one sent me a message.
Oh, man.
And then like, when can I do that? It's going to be open later. Oh, I guess it closes in half an hour. And you're doing your demo now. Sorry. But you got an early demo. And so but we make video and I need a photo for a thumbnail, but they worked it out. They eventually got me in at the end. That's how I was able to get my demo. So I really appreciate it to the PR team for making that happen. Yeah, that's my last behind the scenes story, I think.
Thank you, Norm.
And the the video, yeah. Thank you for the compliments on the video. I just recorded that as if I was doing a podcast with Jeremy and Kishore and just interrupting them anytime they wanted to talk. So,
and did you do that on the Apple campus, or was that someplace across the street?
it was across the street at the visitor center. They had that closed off for press. So the rooftop deck of the visitor center, where you can buy Ted Lasso gear. I think the only place you can buy Ted Lasso, like the Richmond team, fake.
Did you get an AFC Richmond
football team?
Did you get
exactly.
A Roy Kent shirt?
$65 for a hoodie. No thanks.
Gina got me a Roy Kent shirt for my birthday a couple of years ago. It's awesome.
Wow. All right.
Thank you to Norm for taking the time to come talk to us. I always love the amount of depth and detail he brings to product hands-on and firsthand experience. Also, congratulations to Norm. I didn't realize this invite represented, I guess he seized the chamfered aluminum ring on this one by finally getting the invite and getting to go.
I mean, like, I think I said this in that. So we're recording the intro and outro a little bit after we recorded the actual episode. But when we started tested at Maximum PC, we got invited to Apple stuff, right? Because it's a print magazine and they like print magazines. And
even though it had PC in the title.
Yeah, but we covered MP3 players and we covered laptops and we covered stuff like that. We didn't get invited to the iPhone event because that was pretty small. But like iPod, like I was at the iPod event. I was at a lot of the iPod events actually, and at the MacBook, the aluminum MacBook event, like I'm in the video holding the frame of the thing as it's being passed around, so we could handle this single cut piece of aluminum for the MacBook or MacBook Air. I can't remember which one.
That was the first Mac I ever bought. That first unibody, I was extremely excited about it.
Yeah, it is. Look, if I were ranking laptops here, it's probably number 1 or number 2 for me. But when we started tested, we were like, one of the things we talked about before we left Maximum PC was, hey, if we go to this, do this new thing, we're going to lose all this access that we had before. And we're like, you know what? Fuck access. We don't need access. But I still would, every time there was an event announced and we didn't get invited, I would send a note to the PR people who'd been so nice to us before and be like, hey, just wanted to let you know we're available. I'd love to come down and see the thing. Like, it's something we would definitely cover and do a video of if we could get the early access on the devices. And even if you don't let us in, we'll probably buy the hardware anyway when it comes out and then talk about it then, so it's going to happen either way. No, not only did we get a polite no, we just got no response for years.
This is making me feel so much better, having also gone through this now exact same experience of having spent 13 years building relationships and cachet and getting entrenched on invite lists and, making a name for yourself as an outlet and then leaving and doing it again.
Yep.
Some of that access does go away.
Well, so the weird thing though is, as we started posting videos and we got, like, there was the early days of tested, we were bad at video. Like Norm was better than I was, but like our video was not great. And it took a while to kind of get legs. But people started calling, like people started sending notes back, and it started with like, weird as seen on TV stuff, which is why we did a lot of those as seen on TV segments. And then like Intel called and AMD called and Nvidia called, and eventually like we'd reconnected with all these people. Yeah. And now 13 short years later, Norm finally got invited back to an Apple event. So
congratulations.
It's been a long road. But this is the time where we talk about, our patrons and this is a 100% listener supported podcast. If you enjoy Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod, if you would like to support the show so we keep making it indefinitely till one of us, lets loose the mortal coil and then we find another Brad and or Will, you can do so by going to patreon.com/techpod. And for $5 a month, you can get access to the patron exclusive episode every month where we talk about like ongoing projects, things we're thinking about doing episodes on, things we're excited about, things we're fighting with.
My USB saga might be coming to a close today. I bet the patrons can't wait to hear about it on the next patron episode. I'm
going to talk about how my CPU really was broken and I wasn't a crazy person with bad memory like the Intel people made me think.
That's wow. Okay, I do want to hear about that.
Anyway, but yeah, you can do that at patreon.com/techpod. And as always, every week we thank our executive producer tier patrons, including Nick Johnston, Paddle Creek Games Makers Fractured Veil, Andrew Slosky, the Bunny Damon. Hold on. Do you when it's DAEMON, do you say Damon or do you say Demon?
It's Demon.
Really?
It's Demon.
Is it like a weird English pronunciation where it's like Daemon?
No, it is archaic. Yes, it's not to just appeal to authority, but if you do look that word up in the dictionary, it just says it's an archaic form of demon.
Oh, okay.
But also, like in the Greybeard Unix world, that's how everybody pronounces it.
Always said daemon.
Like because that's why the mascot of FreeBSD is a little devil.
Wow, this a whole lot of this is a real Phoenix Down moment for me.
Mm-hmm.
My beard is apparently just white and not gray, so I don't know. Just Wedge, thank you, Just Wedge. Joel Krauska, Twinkie 2049. I assume Twinkie must be on the East Coast. By the way, we'll talk about that. Let's talk about that after. But David Allen and James Kamek. I just want to say I was really pleased when I went in the Discord the other day, and there weren't a bunch of people on the West Coast posting shit about how much worse the smoke was during our first taste of the climate apocalypse a couple of years ago here, and there were on Twitter and other places, and people were just like, hey, here's a way you can make a relatively cheap air filter for like $100 with parts that you get at Home Depot and a box fan. Wear a mask. Here's what we did to make it more comfortable when we were going through this, and like sharing advice, and because the thing to remember is your disaster isn't worse than their disaster. They're all the same disaster.
I mean, that's the really depressing part of this to me is like, oh, that awful summer here 3 years ago was not some one-off freak black swan event. It's just something that's going to happen to at least someone every year now.
Yeah. And on that cheery note,
you know what? Hang on.
Yeah.
Let's end on something actually cheery.
Okay, you got something cheery
on the Daemon front.
Yeah.
If you want to just bypass all that and be extra cool, if you really want to be elite,
I'm always, me, I'm the most elite.
You just say D.
Wait, really?
As in, yes, as in System D, Journal D,
like D's?
TimeSync D, Smart D, rsyslog D. I'm literally just reading demons off of the process list on my NAS right now. Login D, Polkit D.
I'm trying really hard not to make a D's nuts. See y'all next week.